Hi, and welcome back to my shop. In the first episode of the step stool series, I basically created the sides of the step stool. And I've gotten the edges all cleaned up and they're nice and matched and everything's looking good on the sides. So it's time that I can start thinking about the joinery that's going to tie these two sides together. And basically all that is a set of two steps. So in this episode, I'm going to start working on laying out where those steps are going to go. Now basically my plan is to have a single through wedged tenon holding each step in place, and I'm going to have a shallow dado on the inside of each side that's going to house the step. I've gone ahead and milled up some hard maple stock for the steps. It's a good choice for two reasons. It is a nice offsetting color to the cherry that I'm using on the sides, and hard maple is very durable. So if people are going to actually use this to stand on, this will hold up to that wear and tear nicely. Now, the one thing I have to take into account here is grain and wood movement. The grain direction for the sides is going horizontally. The steps, the grain is going to be going front to back. The step is going to want to expand and contract this way seasonally. The sides will expand and contract seasonally up and down. It won't move side to side. So I do have a little bit of a challenge there. That's why I'm going to go with a single tenon in the middle that will allow the edges of the step to expand and contract seasonally. And it will just move inside that dado that I'm going to put on the inside of each side. And I'm going to have that single tenon on the edge of each step get wedged in through that through tenon, and that's going to draw the two sides together into the step, and there will be 4 points of joinery across the entire piece, which should make it nice and solid. The first thing I need to take into account is going to be the location of each of the steps. Now you can see on the template I've already laid out where each step is going to be. Now I just assumed 3/4 inch stock when I laid this out. The important line is this top line, because that's going to give me the right height for each step to be in relation to the overall step stool. The stock I'm using is probably greater than 3/4 inch thick, so I'm not going to pay as much attention to that bottom line. But basically I just line everything up, and then that will allow me to extend those lines down so that I can see where I need that step to be laid out. So you can see here all I have to do, again paying attention to that top line in particular, is hold my square up there and extend it across both pieces. And then I'll just repeat the process for the top step, making sure my template's in the right spot. Now the reality here is even if I'm off by a tiny bit, it really doesn't matter. What does matter is that my line is in the exact same place on both sides of the stool. So now that I have my marks made, you might ask, well, how the heck are you actually going to cut a dado on the inside of this piece when you don't have any straight or square edges? Well, we do have one straight edge. It just happens to span both legs. But the bottoms of both of these legs or feet are, in fact, coplanar. They have to be so that this thing will stand up straight. So what I've done is taken a piece of scrap hard maple and I jointed one edge, and then I actually ran it through the planer to get the other edge perfectly parallel. I didn't even want to rely on the table saw for that. So this is perfectly parallel and straight piece of stock. And then I've gone back to my old friend double stick tape and taped the bottoms of the feet to this piece of stock. And this is basically going to act as an auxiliary fence so that I can actually cut those dados on my table saw. So here you can see the setup on the table saw. So this will ride against my fence. And all I've done is made sure to line up the outside edge of this blade to that top line. Now you might ask, why am I not using a dado stack for this? Basically, I want to be really sure I get a nice smooth cut. So I want to use my ripping blade rather than my dado stack. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the top and bottom shoulders using this blade, and then I'll waste out the rest using my dado stack. The other advantage to that is that I don't have to dial that dado stack to the exact same width as my piece of stock. I can just move the fence back and forth to get me to that position. I've gone ahead now and set both of my kerfs, so I have the bottom and top set for this groove. I would ordinarily use my table saw with a dado blade to then remove the rest of this material, but I want to leave the blade that I have in there because I have to repeat this process for both legs as well as the top step. So I really don't want to be going back and forth between my dado stack and my blade. And again, I want to use my standard kind of high quality table saw blade because I want a nice clean edge there. One way I could do this is by using hand tools. I could take a chisel, and basically this is kind of an old technique that I know Chris Schwartz has talked about in the past, where you actually kind of set two fingers below so you can sort of set the depth of the chisel and then run it through this way. But it requires that you bury the end of the chisel sort of in your shoulder, and my chisels just aren't set up for that. That'd be very uncomfortable and would probably hurt. So I'm just going to resort to a plunge router, and I'm just going to do this by hand. I'm just going to be really careful along those sides and where that saw kerf is, and just waste out the material that way. Now, I just want to double check the fit. So I have my bottom step, and I'm actually doing each side individually in case there's any variation in the thickness of this material. And it's just a little tiny bit too tight. I mean, I was obviously erring on the side of tight. So that's one of the reasons that I still have the fence attached here, so I can just change my table saw fence setting just minutely and then fine tune the fit of this. Now back over at my bench, I will test fit this again, and drops nicely in there. So I get a nice sort of custom fine-tuned groove to hold my step. Now all I need to do is repeat the process for the groove for the top step.